You might just start. I would just start talking to people.
Hello. I don't know if you can see me, but here we are in the beautiful Butte Park, and we're Facebook Living for the first time. And what we're going to do is do a Q&A about the pensions issue this morning. Just before we start, I'm Jackie Jones. I'm the MEP for Welsh Labour for Wales. But this issue has absolutely nothing to do with politics. I got involved long before that. I want to just make that clear. I'm not taking a penny for any advice that I wrote as a professor of law either. So I'm here to help if I can. So if you've got any questions, just type them into the Facebook page and it'll come up on my screen, and then I can try and answer that. How does that sound? Well, I'm waiting for questions to come. Let me say that this pension issue is a scandal, and thank you very much for all your comments. It's absolutely tragic and appalling to read all of them, and many emails that myself and many MPs have gotten about this issue. We really need to sort it out ASAP, because people's lives are tragically and awfully affected. Not just that, for the future, because government announced or said that might have to work till we're 75, and I just find that that's just ridiculous and not realistic at all. How are nurses supposed to work till they're 75, lifting patients and working in the NHS, or firefighters, or any of us when we take care of older people like parents or aunts, uncles, and children as well. A lot of the people on the Back to 60 campaign that I've met also have a lot of caring responsibilities, so they're finding it really challenging. So we'll try and do as best we can.
I've had one comment, Jackie. I hear a lot about CEDAW and how this might help 50s women. Could you please explain a little bit more about this and how it will help our case?
Okay, thank you. So CEDAW is, the question was about what CEDAW is and how it might help. CEDAW is the United Nations International Law Convention that is designed to help prevent discrimination against women. And it was signed in 1979 and passed, ratified into law for the UK in 1986 under Margaret Thatcher's government. And that convention talks about getting rid of all discriminatory laws, policies that past administrations and past cultural aspects have had. So, for example, a lot of you weren't able to be part of a pension scheme when you were a part-time worker. A lot of you might have had to give up your job also because of getting married or having children. All of these laws were discriminatory, direct discrimination against women, and they had to be gotten rid of under CEDAW. A lot of those laws are gone, yes, that's true, but their effect are still pretty bad, and a lot of you are finding that you're suffering because of it. CEDAW says you've got to get rid of all of the effects as well, and what you have to do, crucially, is get full restitution for any of those discriminations that happen because of government policy. And that's what we're trying to use CEDAW in order to get full restitution for women. Hope that helps. So one of the things that we did, or I wrote a legal brief about how you can use CEDAW in the court proceedings in order to get a temporary special measure. And temporary special measure is something that is used to say it's not discriminatory, to try and reverse those effects, those negative effects on women, because CEDAW says no, it isn't. We had an example in the UK that we used, and that was the all-women shortlist, and that's the only reason, really, I think, that we have 29-30% women. Otherwise there'll be a lot fewer women. I'm seeing a lot of comments here. Thank you very much for all of those comments. But,
there's one there from Elsie Edwards. Why are the DWP and government taking no notice? I know the job centre are forcing women into full-time work and not considering their health problems.
Well, why is the DUP, sorry, not DUP, that
DWP.
That was a slip of the tongue, wasn't it? Sorry about that. DWP not taking any measures, or not taking enough measures. Well, it's going to cost money. the money that was taken from women who have already earned it, because it's deferred pay. And the Liberal Democrat and Conservative government in 2010, they were determined to push through austerity measures and hiked up the pension age again, which had another effect. I think that's a triple whammy effect on women, on all of you who are in this situation. The DWP is not known for giving out money, and that's why Back to 60 had to go to court in the end, because they won't enforce it. They won't come forward with it. A lot of money. If you look at David Henke, who's done fantastic work as an award-winning journalist for The Guardian and other newspapers, on his blogs and on his website, you'll find that the money is there. We know where it is. We know how it's been transferred. And it's not a question of asking for something that you haven't already earned. It's a question of getting your dues back. DWP is going to be reluctant to do that unless they're forced to, hence the court case.
There's been another question, Jackie, about the judicial review and where we're at the moment.
The judicial review was in June of this year, and it went really well, I think. I sat through it for the 2 days, and as I'm legally trained, I listened to the arguments. It was pretty appalling to hear the same QC who's now in the hearings in the Supreme Court about the prorogation of Parliament, saying that women, men, us citizens, have no right to be told if our pension ages are going to be hiked or not. We have a duty to try and figure this out. I think that's appalling, and I think it's wrong. So after 2 days, he finished with that flurry, and I think the judges weren't particularly enamored with that answer. So we're waiting very patiently for an answer. Sorry, it's very early in the morning, for me anyway. For an answer for the judicial review, which should be any time at all. Now, we've got the Supreme Court case going on, so it might be different courts, of course, but they might be a little bit distracted with all the politics. Hopefully not. But I'm pretty confident that we'll soon hear a positive result from it. Yep. With the fantastic legal team led by Michael Mansfield as well. They did a really great job. Really great job. Catherine Rayner was brilliant as well.
There's been lots of other comments, Jackie. Somebody suggesting a march on London, others asking why, making a point about Boris Johnson's very happy to spend a lot of money but won't give money to the Back to 60s women. Lots of supportive comments as well.
There have been a lot of MPs who've come out in support as well, and Boris Johnson also came out saying that something must be done positively to help 50s women in this situation. So hopefully he'll stick to his word. I don't want to make a party political broadcast here, but hopefully he'll stick to his word, because all it really requires is for the Chancellor to say, right, we'll right this wrong, and go for it. It doesn't require legislation, it doesn't require a court case, it could just be done through political will.
Maz Rhodes Purcell has asked about the EDM and how that's going.
The EDM is an early day motion that has been signed by, I think, about 190 MPs all across the UK from all political parties, and it asks for a temporary special measure to be enacted through Parliament, so for example through a statutory instrument or some other vehicle that Parliament can use in order to right this wrong and to get full restitution for everyone who's lost their money through this hike in pension age. So we'll see what happens next with the prorogation. We'll see if it comes back up. I presume it's still live, and if it isn't, I can assure you it will be again. And it'll probably be signed by more people now.
Sarah McIver has just made a comment that there's no equality for the 50s women in work, and this is just unjust.
Yes, equality for 50s women is very difficult because we've got all these remnants of laws that were discriminatory and lawful. CEDAW said you've got to get rid of all those and others as well. And a lot of them have been, but the effects are still there. And I think actually in many respects we're going backwards with equality rights, because they're very tied up with workers' rights, especially obviously in work. But maternity leave, paternity leave, all of those things, which are becoming much more difficult. People are working longer hours, therefore they need their parents or grandparents to help out, take care of children. Well, if you have to work as well and you've been asked to be an apprentice, I mean, how are you going to do that? It's impossible, absolutely impossible.
Ros Mays just now has said, asked rather, is Boris waiting for the judicial review outcome before he comments further?
I'm not in Johnson's mind, and I really don't want to be, no offence, but I don't know is the answer. I don't know. Probably.
Fee Kennedy has said, how does the number of MPs signing the EDM help with a temporary special measure, etc.?
It gives it political impetus, and they can push forward with getting a statutory instrument, for example, laid before Parliament, or any other instrument that Parliament uses in order to enact it into law. Or they could use it as an amendment to another bill and say that we want this temporary special measure to enact full restitution for 50s women. So that's why. Because it's cross-party, it's got a lot of support, and it pushes the agenda, pushes it up the political agenda, which is always a good thing.
There's been a couple of comments pointing out that the UK pensions package in general is one of the worst in Europe.
Yeah, the UK pensions package is pretty bad. It's, I think, the worst or second to worst in the developed world as well. So for the European Union, it's terrible. It's really terrible compared to other countries. So this issue has absolutely nothing to do with the EU. It's a matter of national law, how much you give to pensions. And there's certainly more money in the pot, that's for sure. We're the 5th largest economy in the world. Why can't we give people a decent pension? It's the least we can do for people. We've worked all their lives, paid in. I've had a lot of comments, a lot of emails saying we've worked for 45 years, we've paid in for 45 years, 50 years, 30 years, all sorts, and never taken a sick day, never taken money off the state. So you should get that pension, no doubt.
There's one comment just now from Mrs. Castleton asking why do they keep saying it'll cost billions to reinstate this when they've already paid into it? Where's their money gone?
Well, so the question is, where's the money gone for Mrs. Castleton? And that's a very good question. What have they done with the money? All of a sudden we are seeing quite a lot of money being released for certain things because we're looking at a general election. So money is around, and the last Chancellor, Hammond, said that he had put aside 49 billion for the Brexit effect. Well, that's part of it, isn't it? There is strong evidence in David Henke's blogs that he's done in his investigative journalism that a lot of the money from the national insurance is still around. They've just shifted it around to different pots. So I believe the money is there. They're just not using it for this purpose. They're using it for other things, and I don't think that's right. You have worked for this money, and you should get it.
One question from Nicola Forson, is it true pensioners will have to do community work to get their pensions? And another from Fee Kennedy saying it's really important that 50s women get their MPs to sign the EDM.
Yes, I don't know about the community service. That one I haven't heard yet, but I have heard about people being asked to sign up to apprenticeships, and that's just a slap in the face as far as I'm concerned. So there are lots of things going on that we shouldn't be going on at all. You should just get your pension back, and that's it. And everything that you should have earned from the age of 60, that's the point. That's full restitution.
Catherine Shaw's made the point that she'll have worked 51 years by the time she gets to 66, and it's hard physical jobs, and that's taken her toll.
Yeah, Catherine has said that she's worked 51 years, and it's just not right, and there's no need for it. in the fifth largest economy or sixth largest economy in the world, why do people have to work that long in order to get a very low pension? There's something wrong here. And obviously I'm on the side that says workers should be compensated and paid well and be able to live well, because this United Kingdom of ours is for all of us. It's not just for the few of us.
Moira Owen has made the point that with the pensions age rising and catching up with the life expectancy broadly, there's not much time to spend in retirement.
Yes, the life expectancy for the first time we're hearing in many parts of the UK is going down for women and for men as well. So especially in the north of England, we know, and in certain valleys, life expectancy isn't the average at all. So it's much less, 10 years in some cases, less than we are told. So the austerity measures and everything that we're doing to our society, and there's climate change action strikes all over the country today and all over the world today. That's another feature of what we've done to the planet and how we treat our human beings, treat each other. It's just appalling. So we really need to highlight this issue and make people take action. And Back to 60 and WASPI 2018 and other groups as well have done a great job highlighting this, and keep fighting. I mean, some of the lovely graffiti that we've seen on the streets of London and elsewhere and on the Houses of Parliament has been fantastic. And let me tell you that when I talk to MPs, they are well aware of what's going on, because they talk to me, well, what's this? What has happened here? What's this Back to 60 doing now? What's going on here? So they're well aware of it, and having more and more MPs talk about it is absolutely fantastic. And I've also gotten the MEPs on side, so don't forget your MEPs as well and write to them too. We're still here in the European Union for a while.
Anne Taylor's got in touch to say that her MP is actually Boris Johnson himself. And before becoming Prime Minister, she wrote to him about her not getting his pension, and apparently he promised her to help.
Well,
so waiting for an answer.
I think more pressure on Johnson. If he's your MP, then that would be great. And if you can make that public, then go for it. Because the more public pressure there is, the harder it is for individuals to stop this. Because 190 MPs, they don't usually, not that many, sign early day motions. It's unusual. And it's because of pressure from you guys. That's the only reason. It's pressure from you guys and from families and friends who keep telling the MPs that these terrible stories. So keep it up. It's fantastic.
Diane Hodgson asking, why are we not hearing any of this on news channels?
I think in November last year, when the initial hearing was, and also in June of this year, there was quite a lot of coverage about it, lots of press about it. But of course, these things drop off the agenda. It's only through concerted effort that they come back up in the press. So it's a matter of when the judicial review judgment comes out, there'll be an awful lot of press around interest then again. But if you can think of some peaceful, I stress, protests to highlight the issues, to try and get the press involved, then please do so. But also having different media outlets retweeting or re-Facebooking, if that's a word, I doubt it. Sharing, thank you. Sharing. David Henker's major blogs that he's done a lot of evidence. The evidence is there, so keep doing that and keep putting the pressure on people. And if you know anyone in the press, who are your family and friends, just tell them, why isn't this on the news? Keep harassing them until they do put it on, in a nice way, in a gentle way.
Maureen Smith has asked a question that's come up a few times, one way or the other. What can be done if your MP states he or she doesn't sign EDMs?
What can you do if he or she, your MP, says that they won't sign EDM? I think They don't have to. There's nothing obligatory about it. I think one of the things you can do is check to see if that is true, whether in the past that they have actually never signed an EDM, never signed an early day motion. If that's true, then I doubt that you'll be able to change their mind, being perfectly honest about it. But if it isn't true, then call them out on it and say, why won't you give me exact reasons why you won't do this? You can always go see them as well in the surgery. I think that's always a good thing to do. Talk to them directly and keep providing them with the evidence of why we think it's really important that they do sign it. 190, like I said, is quite a record. It's a lot of people who have signed it, lots of MPs. So it's a very, very good thing.
It was your first question, so it's worth repeating again for people who've come a little bit later. Susanna Crowley's asked, could you describe how CEDAW supports our campaign, please?
CEDAW is the United Nations Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. I didn't say that earlier because it's such a long word, it's such a long sentence. We ratified it in the UK in 1986, and it basically says that women shouldn't be discriminated against in any way, shape or form in society, whether it's in the media, whether it's in law, policy, whether it's acts or omissions. So, for example, where there have been laws that said if you are a worker, a part-time worker, you're not allowed to be part of a pension scheme, occupational pension scheme, for example, then those kind of laws had to be gotten rid of. And actually, that's an EU law that has to get that said that, by the way. CEDAW is being used in the judicial review and in the campaign in order to say the effect of equalising the pension age hasn't been taken into account because there's an unequal effect on men and women. Whereas men always had an expectation of retiring at 65, women had an expectation of retiring at 60. There's a huge difference between upping the age to 66 for both men and women, or 67 for both men and women, between the men and women, and the effect therefore is much, much greater on women. CEDAW says you're not allowed to do that. You've got to mitigate the effects, and mitigating those negative effects means, I'm arguing, full restitution. So whatever you should have had at age 60 for your pension, you should get back. I hope that makes sense.
Francis Hilton's asked, where's the best place to look at to find out our MP's record on signing early day motions, EDMs?
If you look in their parliamentary pages, they should say there what EDMs they have signed and not signed. So there should be a long list of things.
Eileen Corkill has
I've got
said...
to blow my nose, guys. I'm really sorry. Oh, you can see it's live, can't you? Sorry.
Eileen Corkill has asked, again, this is a question asked earlier, will the judicial review be given a deadline to respond, or can it be prolonged for months and months?
The judicial review, there aren't deadlines that judges adhere to. It's unusual that it's taken so long. I think that it's taking so long because there were a lot of documents to go through, a lot of things to consider, and they're taking it very, very seriously, which I think is a really good sign for us. We had in August the courts shut, so nothing gets decided in August at all. So you can take the month of August out. So it hasn't been that long actually, but it feels like years. I know it does. And every minute we wait is like a lifetime, and I understand that. But we can't, we keep asking all the time when the judgment will come. And you'll hear it first from Back to 60, I'm sure. They will have a press conference, they will have a press release as soon as it comes.
Maggie Howard has asked a question on a few people's minds that if the judicial review is successful, will they automatically get back the money, or will there still be a fight?
Well, we'll see what... so the question is, in case you didn't hear it, is will you automatically get your money back if the judicial review is successful? Well, it depends on what they decide, and I'm, maybe a politician's answer, but it's a law professor's answer. You can't second guess what they're going to decide. and what remedy they're going to recommend. So I can't answer that yet. We'll see what happens next.
Angie Sullivan making a comment that a few others have made, pointing out that there's lots of single and divorced ladies who don't have partners to rely on for financial support, and just highlighting that concern.
Yeah, there are a lot of women who haven't got partners to rely on, or family for that matter. So it's a really difficult issue to cope with. That's why, as a last resort almost, you're using the law, because women aren't that comfortable using legal remedies, because it's seen as very aggressive. I'd rather do it more cooperatively. And there was a chance of doing that, but it just didn't happen. So because of the dire circumstances of lots of people, you just have to assert your rights, and you have to maybe assert them even more forcefully, in a lawful way, obviously, not unlawful at all. The law is there for a reason. Let's use it. Let's right this wrong. That's what I can say.
Muriel Devani, apologies if I pronounced that wrong, has pointed out that this is the latest in a long line of society in general discriminating against women born in the 50s, going back to maternity rights and being sacked when they were pregnant, etc. And Eva Khan asking whether DWP will try to appeal the decision if it's successful.
Yeah, this is a long line of discriminatory measures. It's taken a long time just to get here, and a lot of things are going backwards now as well. And one of the reasons, for me at least, to stay in the EU is to try and make sure that we keep those equality rights, and that's what I fought for all of my life. And the equality rights that the EU passes are minimum standards. Directives are minimum standards. The member state is always, and I mean always, allowed to have better standards, and in many countries they do. In the UK that hasn't traditionally been the case. So these minimum standards will go once we come out of the EU, possibly, and nobody knows yet for sure, but that's a possibility, and that's why I'm fighting so hard to stop that. And it's all tied in with pensions and equality for women and men here, girls and boys, people with disabilities, sexual orientation, sexual identity, because it's the EU equality laws are much wider in many respects than the Equality Act 2010 that we have here. We've asked the government repeatedly, and I'm talking about for 10 years I think, to put the provisions of CEDAW within domestic law. The CEDAW is much, much wider than the Equality Act 2010, to the current laws that we have to safeguard against for equality at the moment. And the government has repeatedly said that if you put the provisions of CEDAW into national law, women will get more rights than other protected characteristics as defined in the 2010 Equality Act. Now that's nonsensical to me, because women are lesbians, they have a disability, they are from BAME communities, they are older, they are younger, so it's nonsensical. So we keep harping on about this because they really don't want women to have more rights. They don't want women to assert the rights they already have, and they will fight very hard to stop it. So will the DWP appeal? I don't know is the answer. In the current political climate, we'll see. It's I wouldn't be surprised if they don't, if we win. I really wouldn't, because I think a lot of MPs, a lot of the government ministers want this issue to go away, and I think they might just say, all right, we've done enough now, especially as the QC who was in the case in the divisional court, Edie, who is now before the Supreme Court for the government, was at the divisional court arguing it. He wasn't, so he was already there. For him to go back to the Supreme Court then and try and argue again on these, what I would call very unconvincing grounds that he put forward, like you don't have a right to know what your pension age is, they don't have a duty to tell you, would be extremely difficult for him. So I'm quite hopeful, actually. But that's my personal opinion, and we'll have to wait for the court. We'll see.
Maureen Smith has asked whether you think that 1950s women campaign will set a precedent for 1960s affected women. And Francis Hilton has asked whether us leaving the European Union and potentially withdrawing from the Human Rights Act would have would further undermine women's rights.
I don't know if you can hear that. It's gone now. I'm not sure if it'll set a precedent or not. It might do. And I think that 1960s women are affected less severely in most cases than 1950s women. So let's see what happens next. I would always be in favour of people, if they have a right to assert that lawfully. So no problem there. The Human Rights Act is part of domestic law, so it is unaffected by us leaving or staying in the European Union. The former Home Secretary Theresa May, who became our Prime Minister, she has stated on many, many occasions that she wants to come out of, or wanted to come out of, the Council of Europe, European Convention on Human Rights, and the Strasbourg Court, which is the Human Rights Court over there. And the worry is if we carry on the way we're doing, we're progressing with Priti Patel, then she has said that she was at one stage in favour of the death penalty. If we leave the Council of Europe, then the death penalty can come back. If we stay in the Council of Europe, we're not allowed to have the death penalty. It's one of the preconditions that Churchill set up, and other British jurists who actually set up the Council of Europe and who were one of the founders of the whole system of human rights as we know it today, and how we've ratified it into domestic law. And also, of course, Churchill was very keen on something like the European Union, the forerunner of it, as well. I hope that explains it.
Lots of general comments, Jackie, thanking you and for Back to 60s for the help. Maybe we could talk a little bit about the Back to 60 campaign in general and how inspiring it's been.
Oh, Back to 60, formidable. In, I think it was September last year, I got a phone call from Joanna Welsh. Was it earlier than that? Seems like a long time ago now. And she very persistently argued and told me about what it was about. And once I understood what she was saying and the effects on so many women, I thought, this is outrageous. So I volunteered to help as much as I could. And because I'm a human rights specialist for women's rights, I wrote a legal brief to help with the campaign. And the campaign has been so successful. It's run on a pittance, but it's run on goodwill and the forcefulness of lots and lots of people behind the scenes. One good friend is Mac, who lives here in Wales and is a fantastic equality officer. And the union have been very, very good to come on board on this, especially Unison. And all of those campaigning groups, because it is about campaigning, including the trade union movement and Back to 60, coming together through the force that is Joanna Welsh and others behind the scenes, is absolutely fantastic. I don't don't want to take away anything from others, because I can't name everyone, because I don't know everyone who's working here. But my main contacts are a group of very dedicated people, including Davina Lloyd as well, and others. There are so many others, and my brain's not functioning as well as it should be, because I got home from Strasbourg at 11 o'clock last night. So Back to 60 has been absolutely crucial, and so have some of the WASPI campaigns as well, especially WASPI 2018. But Back to 60 are holistic. They have a holistic approach, which I think has culminated in the success of having a full hearing, because it wasn't a given. We weren't sure it was going to happen back in November, and they were the ones who got the legal team together and got experts to say the right things, to push the court in the right direction. And then in June, with the legal arguments that were put forward, absolutely fantastic. The investigative work and pushing on all fronts possible, through the political sphere, the trade union sphere, legal sphere, all of that, and getting so many women on board. I think it's nearly 800,000 women who are signed up to Back to 60, as far as I know. It's absolutely brilliant. I just think it's a role model for how to do things in the future. I really do. Fabulous.
Lots of people get in touch generally to share their story and in solidarity. Karen Griffiths-Dixon has pointed out that she had to return to work, and she's finding it difficult, born in 1957, and willing everybody on for the correct result. Maz Rhodes Purcell has just asked again, what is a TSM?
A TSM is a temporary special measure. And so let's say that Parliament wanted to enact a law that was only benefited dogs. Maybe I shouldn't do dog, because this might be not a good analogy. So let's say that the Parliament would like to enact a law that only helped white 60s males gain £100,000 a year payment. That would be discrimination. It would be struck down by the courts. It wouldn't get through Parliament, because that would mean that other people would not have the opportunity to have that 100,000. Temporary special measure is an instrument in international law which says, look at all the hundreds of discriminatory laws that have been in place historically against women, and look at the impact that those have had cumulatively and individually on lives of women. And if you find that you have to get rid of a measure, or you have to enact something positively to remedy that, it won't be in law attacked on the basis of discrimination or equality, because you're trying to remedy a past injustice. So a temporary special measure tries to get Parliament to acknowledge how discriminatory the laws and policies have been, culminating in women not being able to get the equal amount of pension, not the pension age, but equal amount of pension with men. And they never will be. So therefore, they're entitled to full restitution, equality with men. I hope that explains it. It's a technical, legal measure to try and push through getting your money back.
Fee Kennedy asking whether the EU or the UN could insist that the UK abides by CEDAW.
We're pushing for it, and every 4 years the UK is examined at the United Nations in Geneva on its standards with CEDAW, the international standards. And every year various advocacy groups, including Back to 60, because Dr. Davina Lloyd went to Geneva on your behalf, on behalf of Back to 60, and said, look at the discriminatory effect on this group of women. And we say, look, you need to implement this international law and make sure that women have true equality, can assert their rights. And every year, the United Nations has said, yes, UK government enact CEDAW into your national law. They've said it for the last 10 years at least. And the UK government keeps pushing back and saying no, because that would mean women would get more rights than other protected characteristics. For example, pain, disability, age, equality. Look, they're ready for the climate action. Sorry about that. So we're pushing on it all the time, but the United Nations can't force the UK to do it. It can try and sanction it, but that's highly unlikely because women's issues are regressing rather than progressing in the world. So we just keep pushing and pushing and pushing. At the EU level, the equality laws are pretty good. We've progressed a lot in the UK because of EU laws, because we've had to put them into our domestic laws. But if we leave, I am seriously worried, and I'm not saying it because I'm, Labour or whatever. I'm seriously worried about them taking all those rights away, because a lot of it is tied in with workers' rights and a living wage and paternity leave and maternity leave and parental leave and carers leave, all of those things. They look as if they're British law, but a lot of them have come from the EU, have been forced on us in a positive way, absolutely positive way.
Fran Martin asks whether a TSM, temporary special measure, needs to go for a vote in the UK Parliament, and Maggie Howard asking whether, Francis Hilton asking whether women should be more politically active on women's rights issues.
Women should always be very politically active on women's rights issues, but also other issues, of course, as well. We have to create a better society. A social contract between us and the government is broken down, in my view, and we have to rebuild it. And these young people who are walking past us here for the climate action, we've got to re-engage with them as well. So it's about them, it's about us, it's about everyone engaging with the rights that we have. The TSM could be part of an amendment, it could be a statutory instrument, it could be, look, I'll just choose it.
Well done, guys. Nice.
Facebook Live. There you go. That's our future. That's who you're fighting. We're all fighting for as well. A TSM could be an amendment to any bill, because it could be attached to other kinds of bill. But I'm not a parliamentary expert, and there are others who are better suited to answer that question than I. But certainly, we've had an Act of Parliament in 2002 which allowed for all women shortlists, and that was a temporary special measure that was enacted into our system of doing it.
So a couple of comments saying, "Go climate, kids."
Yeah, great. Yeah, climate action is starting here in Cardiff. It's a beautiful day. I hope it is with you as well.
Julie Patterson has said thank you, and you've explained points that she wasn't sure about so clearly. Nicola Forson has asked whether coming out of the EU could be a hidden agenda to reduce women's rights.
Coming out of the EU, a hidden agenda to reduce women's rights. I think it's, that's the political part. So I reserve comment on that, just to say that I'm obviously, you've heard, in favour of staying in the EU for many, many, many different reasons, but we're here to talk about pensions, so I'll reserve that.
Leslie Stubbs asking a question that came up a little earlier. Do you have any idea of the time frame for the judicial review?
No, we don't yet. It should be any day. But you'll hear it first with Back to 60, because they're the ones directly involved with the judicial review. So contact them or be part of them.
Susanna Crowley asking whether who holds the DWP to account for the devastating effects of this decision.
Well, who holds the DWP to account? Well, you do, we do, MPs do. We have to push them to make sure that they do the right thing, and that's what the judicial review is trying to do. You assert your rights, go out and do the climate action change, that started with one little girl, and she's all over the world now, everywhere. We've got action, so it's about making sure we're all there on the fight.
Maz Rhodes Purcell asking a recurring question: what can individual women do to help?
Well, you can write to your MP you can join an action group like Back to 60. I'd urge you to join Back to 60 and keep the pressure up. Gather the evidence of how you've been affected, how other people have been affected, and send it to them. And keep repeating the same message to them if you're not getting an answer. And make sure that the message gets out there. Anyone who's got any contacts in the media, in social media, whether it's Facebook, whatever it is, just get the message out there and come together to do a positive campaign to highlight that nobody's going away. And of course, we may have elections coming up as well, but that's a political point. I won't say any more about that, but that's something to think about if your MP supports the EDM or not.
Francis Hilton asking whether this case will set a precedent for all pensions, male and female, to be equalised in monetary terms, not just age-related, and pointing out that women get much lower pensions in general as compared to men.
We'll have to see. So the point is about whether this will set a precedent for all pensions and the amount of pensions between men and women. Of course, this case is about state pension, and we'll have to see. I can't judge what's going to come out of the actual case. We'll have to figure that out once it comes. If the judicial review outcome uses CEDAW, then that might be one way of for the judges to rule. I don't want to say any more because there are too many variables here, way too many.
Cheryl Sloan asking whether the EDM has now fallen due to the government being due to Parliament being prorogued.
Yeah, we've had this question before, whether the EDM has fallen or not. I don't believe it has. I think it's still there. So it'll carry on. It's still live. And even if it does fall, I think you'll find that you'll have even more MPs, and you'll have another campaign moving forward to get them to sign the same EDM. And I think that won't be an issue at all.
Leslie Stubbs is wishing you to get well soon because you're suffering from a cold.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry about that, blowing my nose on Facebook Live. It's really attractive. Sorry, guys.
While we wait for some other questions, is it worthwhile saying why we're in the centre of Cardiff today?
Yeah, we're in the centre of Cardiff today because we've got climate action protests going on all across the world, and there's some protesters coming, or some ralliers. I don't know if you can see that. Oh, shouldn't I have done that? There. And it's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful place here in Bude Park. I don't know if you can see that or not. This is my first Facebook Live, so there you go. You can see that. And lots of school children not going to school today, which I personally support for this action, totally. And lots of young people, there you go, coming around, and they will protest throughout Cardiff, and it's a gorgeous day to do it as well. So it's about everyone's future. And I think the world is getting more boisterous about asserting rights, because we do feel, a lot of people feel that their rights are being taken away and their futures are being curtailed. And that's not good enough as far as I can see. And people are coming out to say that in droves. It reminds me of the 80s, really, with a different government and the miners' strikes and all those protests that happened then. So it's a very good thing if it's peaceful and doesn't hurt people. So I'm very happy about that.
There's been a couple of comments sharing sympathy for your cold, asking why again the BBC and other outlets are not paying as much attention to this as they should, and a very specific question from Lynn Inslee. So I'll read it out in full. Do you not think that it would have been more productive to have concentrated on the 2011 Act, which was definitely implemented unfairly, and with only a 5-year timescale for implementation, especially as the 53-54 cohort who had 18 months added on.
Well, I think a wrong is a wrong is a wrong, and we should right that wrong. So whether a person has missed out on, I don't know, 2 months, a day, 6 years, 7 years, it's a wrong. And what in my view, this is my opinion, the Judicial Review is trying to do is remedy that, right that wrong, as a matter of principle and a matter of practicality. And that is, whatever you have lost, you should get back. Whatever you haven't been given, you should get. That is what I believe. And a devastating effect can be, for one person, could be 1 month not receiving any money, because there could be possibly unintended consequences to that 1 month not having that money, because if you already live hand to mouth, 1 month not getting a payment could mean that you lose your home, you lose your car, you lose your job, anything like that. So the consequences aren't necessarily bound up with the number of years or months that you don't get something. It's what happens because you don't get what you're entitled to. A classic example of that is universal credit, having to wait 5 weeks in order to get a payment, for example. What happens in those intervening 5 weeks? And here's Anna McMorran. Anna, we're on Facebook Live explaining pensions.
Hello, hi.
We're talking about the EDM and stuff.
So I'm just walking on my way to the climate rally, climate strike in the centre of Cardiff, and here with Jackie now. It's great to see Jackie and how much she is doing on this critical issue of women's pensions and the harm that this is causing across our communities. I see it in Cardiff North, and I see it across Wales and across the UK. The EDM that I tabled in Parliament has had such incredible support across the benches, across the political divide. So that's been really, really positive. So keep going. I will keep going. Jackie and I will keep working together. We'll keep working across the political divide to get the government to make those critical changes, to get that policy changed, so that we can have that absolute need for you to get your money back, that money that is owed to you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Anna.
Bye.
And this was not planned at all.
Not planned. Just walking past with my daughter. Here's my daughter. Off to the climate strike in Cardiff.
Great. Thanks.
Lovely to see you.
Thank you, Anna. Thanks. And that was seriously not planned. That just happened. There you go. And the dog as well.
And the dog.
Yeah. Bye. I'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Okay. So there you go. Straight from Anna McMorran, who tabled the EDM, who happened to be walking past in Bute Park.
There's been lots
There
of
you go.
love for Anna. One question asking whether there's any backup plans if the judicial review doesn't succeed.
Oh, we'll keep going. Talk to Back to 60, talk to Joanne. Yeah, we'll keep going. I've not stopped this kind of work for 20 odd years, so we'll just keep going and we'll get there. Most definitely. So it's getting near the time to finish now, because we've got to go to the climate action, because it starts very soon. So I want to thank you for your patience, and sorry about the nose blowing and stuff. I've never done this before, so it's the first in my life. I hope you, well, not enjoyed it, but at least I hope I've been able to explain lots of things, and thanks to my moderators as well, who helped with the Facebook Live. So take care, everyone. Have a good weekend if you can. Don't work too hard. Remember that tomorrow's another day. And I wish you all the very best. And we'll do this again at another time when other people are not at work. Okay? Take care. Bye. Trying to